In this video, I'm going to show you 4 different ways to finish your fabric. We're going to start with facing. Facing works really well with curves, so I'm going to do this example as if I'm doing it with the neckline of a shirt. So we're going to place right sides together and sew along the edge with a straight stitch. As you can see, if I try to flip this right side out, the fabric really pulls. So we're going to clip the edges all around the curve, making sure not to cut the seam. And this will allow the fabric to lie flat. So flipping the fabric right side out again, you can see there's quite a big difference, and even more of a difference if we iron out the seam. Often with facing, it's recommended to do an understitch. An understitch is just when you sew right along the inside of the facing, catching the seam allowance in the back. Give it one last iron and you're all done with your facing. Now we're going to move on to the bias hem. For this, we're going to need a strip of fabric cut on the bias, which means cut on a 45-degree angle to maximize any stretch in the fabric. As you can see, for a non-stretch fabric, this strip has quite a bit of stretch, which is going to allow us to work it around the curves. We're going to sew those right sides together, molding the bias strip around the curves as we sew. Again, this technique is also very good for curves. We're then going to iron out what we just sewed. We're then going to fold our strip over, iron that down, and then fold the strip over again, encasing the entire raw edge. Then we're going to place pins in the seam that we just created, making sure to catch the bias strip on the other side. And we're going to pin along the entire seam. And then we can sew along where we pinned. And then you can trim away any extra fabric or thread. And we're all done with the bias hem. Now we're going to move on to a blind hem using interfacing. We're going to start by folding our fabric over 1 centimeter and ironing that down. Then we can fold it over by the thickness we want our hem to be. Then we're going to sew down that 1 centimeter fold. Next, we want to size our interfacing. So folding it in half with the glue sides facing out, we're going to make sure that this piece of interfacing is going to fit underneath our hem. Then we're going to sew that folded piece down. And we should be able to slide that right in between our hem with nothing poking out. And then we can lock that in with the iron. And you can play with the thickness of this hem depending on the weight of your interfacing. The last technique is the rolled hem. We're going to start by just sewing a straight stitch along the edge. Because this technique is mostly used with lightweight fabrics, the stitch helps create structure. We're then going to fold on the stitch and iron it down, and then sew along with a second stitch. Then, getting close to that stitch as we can, we're going to trim away any of the excess seam allowance. And then we're going to fold it over a second time and iron that down. And then we're going to do a final stitch right along the edge. And then that's it for our rolled hem. And then here are all 4 together that we just sewed. So here's the wrong sides and then the right sides. And you're all done. Thank you so much for watching, and if you liked this video, please subscribe.